It all started when I was about 10 years old, though I think it might have begun even earlier. That's just the first memory I have of it. You see, I've dealt with sleep paralysis for as long as I can remember, though it happens less often now that I'm an adult. When I've shared this with others, most assume I'm just afraid of the dark or suffer from bad nightmares. But it's more than that. Even if I do have my share of fears and nightmares, from a young age, I experienced incredibly vivid dreams. When I was dreaming, I felt fully immersed. I could see, smell, hear, and even touch. I was also a skilled lucid dreamer, able to control my dreams at will, except for the nightmares. Those were something else entirely, often plaguing me almost every night. I'd dream of falling, of fire, of death, or being utterly alone in an empty void. But the monsters? Those were the worst. Some of the creatures came straight from classic 80s slasher films. Jason, Freddy, and others lurking in the shadows of my mind. Likely thanks to my mom letting me watch those movies far too young. I also read Stephen King way before I should have. But the monsters from my own imagination, they were far worse. My dreams were a twisted reflection of my subconscious, conjuring grotesque beings that felt like they crawled straight from the depths of hell. Imagine this: twisted, misshapen forms that vaguely resembled humans. Missing limbs, grotesque faces with skin peeling away, and eyes that hung from their sockets. Others were huge, monstrous creatures with razor-sharp claws and teeth, or dark shadows with glowing red eyes that stood silently in the corners of my room, watching me while I went about mundane tasks like homework or watching TV. Many times, I'd wake up just before they got me, but not always. You know how people say you can't die in your dreams? Well, I've died many times. Falling from great heights, burning in flames, being stabbed, even attending my own funeral. Let me tell you, I didn't sleep well after that last one. But here's the twist. I wasn't really scared of the dark, or even the nightmares themselves. No, my real fear was waking up in the dark. Let me paint a picture of what a typical night was like for me back then. I would drift off to sleep in my bedroom, often with the TV on for some light. The sound would be just loud enough for me to make out the dialogue, or sometimes I'd fall asleep on the couch, comforted by the sounds coming from my parents' room. Then the dream would start, and oh, the worst one would always begin the same way. I'd wake up in my own bed, but this time I'd see through my own eyes, rather than from a third-person perspective like most dreams. I'd glance over at my alarm clock, and without fail, it would read 3:33 a.m. That's when the fear would hit me. I knew what was coming, but I felt powerless to stop it. I'd swing my legs over the side of the bed, stretching and yawning, and start to head for the bathroom. Though I never made it there, suddenly, I'd trip over something and crash to the floor, my nightstand knocking the alarm clock onto my head before it bounced away. Lying there, cursing myself, I'd peer under the bed. But there was nothing there. Nothing but a wall of blackness, an empty void that swallowed the meager light in my room. That's when I'd freeze in fear. Then, two small blue orbs of fire would appear, staring into my soul. The breath of whatever was lurking there was the worst part. I could see it and smell it simultaneously. It felt as if it were exhaling fog, like when you breathe out in winter. But instead of being cold, that breath chilled me to the bone. And the stench? Oh, it was horrific. Like someone had taken dead animals and dirty diapers, set them ablaze with 1,000 matches. My mind screamed at me to run, to hide, but my body remained frozen. I struggle and fight, swinging my elbows and kicking my legs as hard as I can. Eventually, I manage to loosen the creature's grip, and then I wake up. But here's where the real fun begins. I find myself completely frozen, sometimes to the point where I can't even open my eyes. Sometimes that's all it is. Just a minute or two of paralysis before I snap out of it. Honestly, I'm getting a little freaked out just writing about it. The memories are that vivid. Other times, the nightmares don't just stop, they follow me. I remember one night, lying there frozen, trying desperately to force my eyes closed. That's when I heard it, a thick, gravelly voice whispering, "Come back under the bed. The games are just starting." I couldn't turn my head to look toward the sound, and honestly, I'm not sure I would have even if I could. But I could feel its cold breath brushing against my ear. I must have screamed, even though I don't remember doing so, because my mom burst into the room and flipped on the light. I swear I caught a glimpse of a shadow melting into the floor, retreating back under the bed. She checked, assured me there was nothing there. But to this day, I still don't know what to believe. According to the therapists and counselors I've spoken to, I was experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations common to sleep paralysis. But they don't know how real it felt. When I finally woke up, able to move again, I would leap out of bed, keeping a safe distance from the edge, and sprint to my parents' room, crawling into bed with them. Sadly, I did this until I was about 14. Often, though, I wouldn't wake up in my own bed. Sometimes, after those specific nightmares, I would find myself on the floor next to my bed. That was the worst, especially if the paralysis kicked in, which it often did. I've woken up on the couch, on the floor in my parents' room, even in the empty bathtub. Once, I even found myself on the porch. On those occasions, I would sometimes discover scratches and cuts on my body, often small, but once I had a 6-inch gouge across my ribcage. I still bear that scar. My therapist said it was due to sleepwalking and running into things. My grandmother had a very different take on my nightmares. I adored her. She wasn't your typical sweet old lady. She had a deep appreciation for the occult. When I told her about my dreams, she crossed herself and made that weird little evil eye gesture. I asked her why she was freaking out. "My dear," she said, 3:33 is a time of evil. 3 is a number of Satan. 3 a.m. is the witching hour, when the veil between realms is thin and reality can be warped. It's more likely that it's an actual demon trying to drag you to the underworld. You're lucky to have survived the attacks. She also insisted that I wasn't sleepwalking, as the therapist suggested, but rather that I was visiting another plane of existence, or even the underworld. We always thought she was a little eccentric, but now, I'm not so sure. I wish she was still around to help my family. Recently, my 7-year-old son has been waking up in the middle of the night, right around 3:30 a.m., screaming about a monster with blue fire for eyes. One night, after a particularly intense episode, I held him close, whispering that it was just a dream and he would be okay. But he kept repeating, "No." When I finally calmed him down a little and asked why he was saying no, he looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes and said, "I don't want to play under the bed." And just like that, the cycle continues. If you enjoyed this story, please hit like and subscribe for more. Thanks for listening.